the I've been talking to you about Saudi Arabia collapsing, and let me go there right now. We're going to take a look here, and here is the Sunni-Shia divide in the Middle East. This is Saudi Arabia here in blue. There's Yemen down here, Sudan, Egypt, Iraq, Iran, and it's identifying each area. Saudi Arabia is 85 to 90% Sunni, 10 to 15% Shiite. Kuwait is 70% Sunni, 30% Shiite. Bahrain is 60 to 65 Shiite and 30 to 35% Sunni. Etc. You can see here's Iraq or whatever. This is the Middle East. The Middle East is a tinderbox. We're trying to make peace with Iran. We've been turning our back on Saudi Arabia. Now, of the Muslim world, about 70 to 80% of the Muslim world is Sunni, and about 20 to 30% is Shiite. And so, what happens is the United States has had our allies have been Sunnis, Saudi Arabia, etc., United Arab Emirates, etc. Our allies have essentially been Sunni. Now we're switching. The Obama administration has decided to make the Shia their allies. So they started making a deal with Iran. It's made Saudi Arabia very upset, and it's causing a major crisis area going on right now in the Middle East as we change horses in midstream there. Here is Byron King. And he has written an article, and the reason I'm reading it, because he's writing what I believe. So, and he's a good writer, and he's got good research, and so then I don't have to write it myself. I can just read somebody else who believes what I believe. He says, what I'm predicting today is because we live in a dynamic world that doesn't always follow the script, but I believe the wheels are going to fall off of the Middle East this year. I'm specifically referring to Saudi Arabia, or the big enchilada, as Richard Nixon once called it. The Middle East wars have been in Egypt, in Libya, in Iraq, and in Syria so far. ISIS has been a major player. You know all that if you read the newspaper. Much of that warfare has been funded and inspired by Saudi Arabia. So, why? Because Saudi Arabia is essentially behind ISIS. And Saudi Arabia is our ally. Has been, which is continuing with Iran and its proxies for regional power. Saudi Arabia itself has been unscathed so far. But this is the year that blowback happens. I think Saudi Arabia is going down. We're going to see revolution in Saudi Arabia. We're going to see war in Saudi Arabia. Let your mind run wild with that for a while. But when the wheels fall off in Saudi Arabia, any energy prices will go up. Some people say we have all the oil we need here in America. That's barstool talk, okay? We don't have all of our own oil, and the oil that we do have is still subject to the global price mechanism. If something bad happens in Saudi, and I'm predicting, forecasting, warning that something bad ought to happen in Saudi this year, those prices are going to go up globally. They're going to push up U.S. prices. They'll also increase gasoline prices. You'll feel it at the pump. Obviously, you'll read about it in the newspaper. He suggests Schlumberger as a possible investment. Anyway, he says, my big forecast, my big warning, my prediction for 2016, if you want to call it that, is that bad things are going to happen to Saudi. All those years of deceit, of funding ISIS, of spreading a very destructive ideology across the world, it's all going to come back. Karma is a you-know-what, and it's going to come back to Saudi this coming year. We'll see a reflection in a higher oil price just because of nervousness in the market, if not physical destruction in the oil fields. What I feel we're going to see is physical destruction in the oil fields. Now, let's get what I think is coming. This is a chart of what the new Middle East is going to look like.
Where did this come from?
This was a think tank that created a map of how to have a peaceful, prosperous, Middle East. And in this area, you can see this is Saudi Arabia, right in this area. What you can see happening is you can see that they plan on creating an Islamic sacred state where Shia and Sunni could worship at Mecca and Medina. They have a Saudi homelands, independent territories. They see that part of Saudi Arabia becomes a part of the new Arab Shia state. This is the oil area producing area, and it's also the Shia area of Saudi Arabia. They're gonna divide around the middle, and they're gonna have an Arab, a Shia state, and they're gonna have a Sunni Iraqi state, and Baghdad is going to be a city-state on the border between. Kurdistan is going to expand. They're going to get territory from Turkey and some from Iran and some from Iraq, and we're going to have a free Kurdistan. Iran is going to shrink in size. Here's Baluchistan is going to increase. Afghanistan is going to decrease. Yemen is going to increase. This is what they're essentially doing. And they see this, and this is the plan, I believe, that they're working toward. They're working toward trying to bring peace to the Middle East. You have to separate the Shia and the Sunni. So this is a plan to do that. This is a plan to carve up Saudi Arabia. And what my thoughts are, Saudi Arabia sees it coming. They see that they are coming to get us. Here is the war. Iran is sending Shia into southern Iraq. Southern Iraq is already Shia. Lebanese are sending people in here to the northern boundary with Saudi Arabia. They're putting Shia controls over this area here, which Saudi Arabia has to ship their oil through. They're trying to get Shia control of Yemen down here with a war going on. They got a war going on. They're trying to breach into this area of Saudi Arabia right now with the Yemenis, Shiites coming in there. And so we have this big border between Iraq and Jordan and Saudi Arabia that is going on right now. And what Saudi Arabia is doing is they are building this northern border security fence. It's got big berms. It's got 3 lines of fences. It's got a road. It's got guard towers. It's got radar units. It's got military patrolling up and down the area. They've got it set up. They can spot their low-level helicopters at 37 kilometers, light aircraft at 27. They can find people, slow-moving people. They can spot at 18 kilometers. They've got this. They're setting up all across here and down Jordan, and they're going to continue it here. So they are getting ready for that. They are next on the list. Now, when you look at Saudi Arabia and you find ISIS doing some incredible exploits, such as something they did in Paris or some terrible bombing or whatever, the Twitter land lights up. And people are approving it. They're sending out tweets that are approving these actions, and some are condemning it. But the ones that are approving come from Saudi Arabia. So what Saudi Arabia has done is they have the theology of Saudi Arabia is Wahhabism, which is exactly what ISIS is doing. That is their theology, is the very that it comes from Saudi Arabia. And so what happens is ISIS is already all through Saudi Arabia. That's why Saudi Arabia rounded up these 45 people and executed, chopped their heads off, shot them in firing squads. And who did they kill? They killed a leading Shiite cleric in that. And so then Iran rioted, burned the Saudi ambassador's residence and the diplomatic things in Iran. They broke off all ties between the two. And so what you're going to see is the Saudi Arabia beginning to have problems with this. Now, what I believe behind this is the front excuse. Behind this, I believe, are the big oil monopolies. The oil companies are in cahoots with the money managers of the world to run the world. Oil is like money. They're there to run the world. They're being killed by these low oil prices. They're just being killed. They're going to be going bankrupt. So what are they doing right now? What the oil companies are doing is they're doing M&A. They're merging with the little producers who are going under right now. Because the big oil companies have lots of money on hand, and they can get any amount of money they want from the government or the central banks anytime they want. So they can produce any that they want. So what they're doing is they're buying up the small companies for pennies on the dollar. Then what they're going to do is they're going to take Saudi Arabia offline, which is producing whatever it is, 10, 11 million barrels of oil per day, whatever it is. The United States is importing whatever 7 million barrels of oil a day from them, and they're going to take that offline. Why? Because what did Saudi Arabia do? They picked a fight with Russia, didn't they? Russia, the biggest energy producer on earth, gas and oil combined. When you combine gas and oil, they collapsed. The Saudis collapsed the oil price on purpose to wound and hurt Russia. Why? Because Russia was supporting Syria, which is an enemy of the Saudis. And Iran. And to punish Iran. Now, and then what did they do? They saw what America was doing with fracking and producing oil and natural gas through that process in America, where we now are producing way more and we're beginning to be able to handle our own energy needs. They saw that if they let that continue to run, that they would be really hurt. So they depressed the price of oil in the world so that our companies such as the fracking oils, our fracking companies in the Bakken, the Permian Basin, Eagle Ford, those companies would all fold. Why? Because they had higher expenses in those areas than what the Saudis did. So they made enemies of America, they made enemies with Russia, and they made enemies with the big oil producers in the world. Other than so what we see is it doesn't take much. A small CIA team with some funding Islamic terrorists, give it some shoulder fire rockets, let them start shooting these into these storage tanks filled with oil, and you get smoke and fires and all this stuff going on. And of course, what are they doing? They're accusing the Saudis of being corrupt. Are they? Yes. Are they? Yes, they are. They are corrupt. And what are they? The Saudis, what? They're already they already own their beautiful residences in Switzerland. They already have palaces set aside that they spend much of the year there anyhow. Mike.
On the surface and on the subsurface, what do you think is the purpose that ISIS is fulfilling in their minds?
What is the purpose that ISIS is fulfilling? In their minds. Well, what happens is, it's so hard to see because there's a smoke screen up there. True evidence is but it appears that the war on terror as a whole is a farce. That is, we needed a war on terror in order to build up the national security and the military power. That we needed a war on terror. It doesn't work to just have a war against a nation. You can just fight terror. You can fight terror forever. Well, it can be any kind of terror. So if you have a war on terror, it's gotten us to give up a lot of our personal rights. It's given the government privileges to look and snoop on all of us in every area of life, and that they have. And so what I see is I see a need for a war on terror in the world. First of all, if you have a nation and you have an army, but your army has never fought a war in 20 or 30 years, how good are they? Well, what you end up having, essentially in that situation, is a bunch of old people, pot-bellied old people, who are still in the army. They just stay, they haven't had to fight a war, they're just permanently. In order to have an army that's prepared, you must be constantly in warfare. I mean, that's just the nature of an army. You can't have a good army unless you're fighting. And you have to have people who are experienced and trained and who are sorted out. The weak ones fail, the strong ones succeed, etc. So any nation that allows themselves to get in that situation, that happened once before. We had Egypt was constantly fighting against Syria, and we had a situation where eventually they were both using mercenaries, which became known as the Sea Peoples in history. They were using mercenary armies to fight one another. Well, what happened was Egypt and Syria got together and made a peace deal, and they ended up having peace for 20 some years between the two empires. Well, these people, what we call the Sea People today, they were the mercenaries. They were the trained mercenaries, and they had nobody. That's how they made their living. They were paid to fight, and the nations got tired of paying those money. And so eventually, what you find is the mercenaries gathered together and took on Egypt and came in and took over. And you have these Sea Peoples coming in and taking over those areas. They were the mercenaries. And so what happens is, if you're a nation, a major nation in the world, you have to be ready to fight at all the time. The only way you know how to fight is to fight. And so we're in constant war. And the industrial military complex in America keeps that budget flowing, keeps that money flowing, and we can't know where it is, why, and how they're doing, or whether they're even efficient, why, because it's all top secret. So you have our the Secretary of Defense come out, Donald Rumsfeld, and says on the day before 9/11, comes out and says, we've got $2.3 trillion missing from the Defense Department. The next day, the facilities that had the records to that missing $2.3 trillion were destroyed. At the Pentagon, Building 7, Building 1 and 2, they all came down. Those facilities that had those records, the offices that were conducting the investigation, the Office of Naval Intelligence, totaled by whatever hit the Pentagon. Totaled. So I mean, you just come out and you find out that was just for 1 year. Well, if you say that they got $2.3 trillion missing for 1 year, that was the tax revenues that the United States government had for that year. $2.3 trillion. So how did they lose 2.3? Well, obviously it had some. Where did that money come from? Well, there's other sources of money in the world, and much of our military industrial complex is self-funding, and there are black budgets, and there's all kinds of things that are going on in the world today. So what we have is, I believe that we're in a state of constant war, and the war on terror was the ideal field, the military police state that is coming. It is building those particular systems.
So could we say this is a banker's war?
Yeah, well, bankers make money, and all wars are bankers' wars. when you look at any war, how do nations fight? They borrow money. They buy from the same arms dealers almost. They borrow money from the same people, both sides. The Germans in World War II, United States, we were doing the same thing. For instance, why did the Rothschilds end up owning much of Israel? Do you want to ask that question? Because the Rothschilds loaned money to the United States and Britain and the Allies, and they loaned money to Turkey and the Germans and the Axis, the evil Axis. When war came and it came time for debt settlement, the Rothschilds presented their case, said that Turkey has lost the war. We need to be repaid our loans that we made to Turkey during the war. And what did they get? They got the Turkish Railway. The Turkish Railway owned property. It owned railroads and property, and it owned property and railroads all the way down into Israel. They owned big swaths of Israel. So when the Rothschilds got their money, they got the money back that they had loaned to fight on the Turkey. They just claimed it, and they put a claim in and got all this back. So, what happens is all wars are bankers' wars. They make money off of every war. They loan money to both sides. They establish collateral. They might take them years or maybe decades to even collect it, but they own it. They collect it. And in every war we have, they end up with more. This is called vulture capitalism. We start a war on purpose to destroy a nation and destroy the value of their assets so that we can come in later and rebuild it and take it and own it. We own the railroads, the airports, the national forests, the ports, the et cetera, That's a part of what's called vulture capitalism. We use the military to destroy an area so that the bankers can come in and own, and the big companies can come in. It's not about the other stuff of whether this was a bad group or a good group or whatever. It's about ending up with a total. Thomas, you have a comment?
I wanted to go back to something else.
Okay. So you guys got me off track here.
It's your fault.
Let me go through. Let me talk about headlines. We're starting to see some headlines. These are prophetic headlines. These are headlines that came to Terry Bennett, who's a prophet, and here's how they come. He'll be waiting on the Lord, and he'll see a newspaper. This newspaper will be folded like you would find a newspaper on like a USA Today, and the thing will come spins around, comes in front of him. It's kind of flat, and then it tips, and then he can read the headline. This is what he experiences. He can read the headline. It comes to him like that, and so he captures these headlines that come to him. And usually they will have a download of several or many. And so when we look at these headlines, these are headlines. We're going to go through a lot of them, but we're going to see how these are playing out right now today before us. So he reads these headlines. He got these headlines received in August in 2010. And I'll just read some of these to you. Ron, did you get the other one too? Push that thing. Yeah. Here's he says, Washington, D.C. shaken, rioting and looting continue. Now, these are not in any particular sequence. Emergency meetings being held by U.S. Senate and Congress. Worldwide economic confidence towards USA remains dim. Dow flops and drops to all-time lows. Other markets tumble as well. Governors call for constitutional convention. We're going to cover that. We're going to cover that. Emergency meetings of economic advisors called in Europe. Asian markets seek stability within Asian region. Pull away from USA begins. Martial law declared in nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Resignation fever hits Washington, D.C. Finger pointing continues to fuel resignation in Washington, D.C. Who will pick up the pieces? New People's Party gaining ground with hearts. We have a new political party coming in the United States, which is what Rick Joyner just sent out in his latest bulletin. Jobless rate passes 32%, expected to rise. Big freeze, government spending cut by 50%, education and military at front of cuts. Martial law declared in New York, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Miami, Chicago, and other U.S. cities. Lights out. Rolling electric outages expected to continue. Here comes the sun. Oh, I had wings that I might fly away. The night the lights went out in Georgia, Atlanta area hit the hardest. The dark night of the soul. Plume cloud covers over half of the United States. Northern Ocean shows signs of heating up. 12-degree flux. Euro dollars in trouble. Falls to new low. Germany and France forge alliance. German and French currency unveiled. Others consider participation. Japan quake shaken awake. Early morning quake measures 7.7. More tremors expected. Taiwan's government seeks expanded powers. 9.1 quake rocks Japanese island. Sleepless in Seattle, Mount Rainier awakens while residents lose sleep. New America's currency unveiled. We're going to talk about that. New America's currency unveiled fosters angry debates. The agony of silence, U.S. and Trident submarine lost. Deep in the heart of Texas, independent fervor in Austin, more rallies planned. Fatal attraction, the concerns over increased magnetism of our planet. Russia and China face off, arguments heat up with new threats. India's shaky ground, northern quakes challenge infrastructure. Philippines brace for new violence, government and Christians targeted. Islam sails on the attack. Mexico City, Joe bomb, reprisals expected. Mexico shaken by northern quakes and eruption. Iraq eruption, unprecedented violence. Insecurity exposed and oil threat. Saudi Arabia halts oil flow to the United States. Focus on that one. Israel braces for multi-front war. Egypt, Syria, Jordan, Iran, and Israel mobilized. Saudis on full alert. Greece, Italy, Spain join German and French alliance of economies, which is going to be called the AOE. Canadian quake shocks British Columbia, Vancouver affected. Major rioting in Baltimore threatened services and deliveries. The riots in Montreal, Canada, were a French disturbance. These are ones he received on November the 12th, 2011, about pharmaceuticals, trial for the unborn, the ring of fire, season of burning in Chicago, Washington, D.C., embroiled, protesters unlimited, Constitution questioned, Constitution opposed, constitutional changes, Constitutional Convention, a line drawn in the sand in Texas. Break up, break through. Which will it be? United we stand or divided we stand. Protesting the Republican Democratic parties, their power challenged in court. The day the dams broke, seismic activity in the north, in the Midwest. Dust in the wind, the Kansas nightmare. Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Nebraska drought, heat and windstorms. Dust Bowl type conditions. Prices versus wages, the poor, the wealthy, the profit margin, the battle lines. No military surplus, a closed pocketbook to military wish lists. The last battle of the Marine Corps. The few and proud may become fewer. Necessary or unnecessary. The Corps or single brigade, will they survive? Islam, American politics and policy. Exploring the boundaries of religious freedom. Oil crisis and big oil crisis. Manipulation, money, and monopolizing. A nuclear reactor that's overreacting. The threat of radiation poisoning America. Here we got October 2012. The Band of Brothers, Rule 101. States' rights governors unite to take a stand. The Mission Impossible mission, helping the world. Free falling, how do we stop the stock drops? Leaning Tower of Italy, will it fall? London Bridge is falling down. From stumble to tumble and still falling. The day the earth stood still, the sum of all fears. The silencing of the lambs, crackdown on church voices and money. Another bite out of the big apple, a shaken city responds. The muzzling of the oxen, free speech is costly. The postman isn't coming. Reduction and closures of personnel and offices. The day the dams broke, nature's fury revealed. We won't go through them all.
Is there any good news?
Yes, there is good news. The kingdom of God is coming, and it's on its way. And these are all the prerequisites for what we need. So what do we have? What are we going to take a look at here? We're going to take a look at this. Yesterday, Senator Ted Cruz and the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, stood at the in the U.S. Capitol and called for a new constitutional convention. Texas government proposes constitutional convention would give states power to overturn federal law. Governor Greg Abbott called for a convention of states to pass 9 new amendments to the U.S. Constitution in what he is calling the Texas Plan, citing what he characterized as unconstitutional overreach by President Barack Obama's executive branch, Congress, and the Supreme Court. Abbott said the crux of his plan will be to strengthen the 10th Amendment. That amendment says that the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Throughout his Friday address, Abbott repeatedly accused the federal government of moving away from the original intent of the country's founders. Quote, these increasingly frequent departures from the constitutional principles are destroying the rule of law foundation on which this country was built, Abbott said. We are succumbing to the caprice of man that our founders fought to escape. The cure to these problems will not come from Washington, D.C. They must come from the states. And so he said, a convention of states is the best way to fix the cracks in our broken Constitution. The governor's office said the 9 proposed to be this. Number 1, prohibit Congress from regulating activity that occurs wholly within one state. 2, require Congress to balance its budget. 3, prohibit administrative agencies and the unelected bureaucrats that staff them from creating federal law. 4, prohibit administrative agencies and the unelected bureaucrats that staff them from preempting state law. 5, allow a 2/3 majority of the states to override a U.S. Supreme Court decision. 6, require a 7-justice supermajority vote for the U.S. Supreme Court decisions that invalidate a democratically enacted law. Have you ever wondered how here in South Carolina, 75% of the people voted for marriage between a woman and a man. 75%. And what happened? Because one person on the Supreme Court, one was a 5-4 decision. We have overruled 75% of our votes. We are being overruled. The majority is being overruled. 58% of Americans said they did not want Obamacare. We got Obamacare anyhow, but by one vote. You know, over and over, it's this one vote. Restore the balance of power between the federal and state governments by limiting the former to powers expressly delegated to it in the Constitution. 8, give state officials the power to sue in federal court when federal officials overstep their bounds. And 9, allow a 2/3 majority of states to override a federal law or regulation. And so he has put that forth. And what did we see? We saw those very things we read right here were mentioned in prophetic headlines 5 years ago. So we're seeing the very thing being played out. It was actually announced yesterday in Texas. And what did we see? It was in Texas that was going to happen. We see these very prophetic things happening. So I want you to take a look at that. Yes.
Star Wars, the Force Awakens.
The Force is awakening. That's right. Well, the Force is awakening. There is good news, and I'm going to get to the good news eventually. I'm going to get to it. Because the Lord spoke to me. Do you guys know who Perry Stone is?
Yes.
Perry Stone, yeah. He has a prophecy alert he put out, and I just wanted to read it because part of it to you. because it agrees with what we've been seeing. He says, prophecy alert, will the dollar be replaced? Several years ago, a person within or inside with inside connections to the Federal Reserve sent me pictures of a prototype new currency that was being planned in the future for the North American Republic, consisting of Canada, Mexico, and America. It included all levels of currency, ones, fives, tens, 20s, etc., with Spanish, English, and French words describing the amount. Readable in the language spoken in all three countries. There was a blue flag with 3 stars and barcodes on each bill that could trace how much dollars were carrying through scanners. Basically, he says, our national debt is so high that we are one major disaster away from a national crisis. John Kerry accidentally let the words North American Republic slip a few months ago. I will be showing the currency and getting inside information from IMF bankers about secret plans occurring next year at our prophecy conference in April during our closed session, lower session. There are just things I refuse to discuss on Facebook for numerous reasons. Repost this if you wish. Don't forget I'm preaching whatever. Here. So basically what he has said is that he believes that we have a brand new currency coming. And that, let me shut this down. And let me go over here. Let me see, which one will I do? Well, look at this. But here's what Terry saw. He had, the angel Gabriel came to him and told him we were going to have these 3 7-year periods, and they were going to work out this way. The first 7-year period, we were going to see a one world economic system established. In the second 7-year period, we were going to see a one world governmental system, political system established. And in the third 7-year period, we're going to see a one world religion established. And these are the years. Started back here in 2008, and went to 2029. And basically, what he saw during these times were we see a new world currency being put into effect at this particular time. We just signed off on that. And we probably have some kind of merger between the U.S. Fed and the People's Bank of China coming. And so right in here, there's going to be a second economic crisis. In 2015, 2016, looks like it's pushed into 2016, right in this area, right in here. And at the same time, we're moving towards one world governmental system. So if we, and then we have explanations on this. The one world economic system, what we've already had Basel III regulations. We've already had a strategic economic dialogue with China, many different deals, new World Trade Bilateral package, the new IMF restructure of the world currency, SDR, by the 2010 reforms, so those have already been put into effect. Trade promotion authority has been given fast track, has been given to the president. The TTIP is in negotiations. Trans-Pacific Partnership is in negotiations. The merge of the Fed, the People's Bank of China have Basel IV banking regulations are coming too. The One World Economic System is almost here. It's been approved. One World Political System. Pope is to support the mission of the New World Order. The world's divided into 10 economic unions, each with a leader. The new United Nations is coming. The U.S. is going to lose some of its veto power. Anti-Islam and anti-Israel sentiment is increasing. UN humanitarian projects are scheduled for the developing world. UN is going to abolish world hunger. They're going to expand the UN peacekeeping force, not U.S. UN. Annual UN dues are going to be paid in IMF SDRs. And alien civilization and Nephilim are going to guide development of the New World Order. And UN controls all regional governments. that's what I see coming. So, let me, go there. Let me do this. Now we have the New World religion coming in the next 7 years. The Pope is developing the United Nations of Religions. We have a revised Bible coming where homosexuality is no longer a sin. We have a revised Quran coming where jihad is defined spiritually with no violence involved. We have a New World religion that's going to control all media and social media. We have religious coming, aliens, which are actually fallen demons as Nephilim, will claim that they seeded all life on earth, that they created all religions and were the gods that our forefathers worshipped. 3, that they created the megaliths and the pyramid cultures around the world. But they are now back at this critical period that leads into a new paradigm, and they, or the Antichrist, are worthy of our worship. This is the system we have coming in the next little bit, the next 12 or 13 years. Joseph appears to Neville Johnson on the day of Atonement 2014 and says that the mark of the beast will be in effect within 7 years from that date, where no Christian will be able to buy or sell without the mark. So that's where I'm just saying this is where we're at. Kind of the overview of where we're at. What we're going to